Thank you, everybody, for joining us here this evening. Beautiful sunny day in Washington. Welcome, everybody, to the 10th edition of our Be Free TV. Like I always say, I'm not a professional podcaster, so please be kind in the comments. Thank God you can't throw tomatoes at us through the interwebs. But very pleased to have you joining us here today. Definitely hit that share button, hit that like button, start a watch party, share it in your groups, tweet it, Instagram it, Snapchat it, all those cool things the cool kids are doing. But we'll be talking about freedom tonight and freedom-based solutions to government manufactured issues. And things that are libertarian ideas that can make the lives of everyday people better right off the bat. So we've been focusing, as you know, on insurance reform, government healthcare reform, and government issues at large. And today I'm happy to bringing on Mr. Judge Jim Gray to be joining us here. He's running for the Libertarian nomination for president. And I'm very excited to have him join us and to kind of be diving into this conversation. So thank you, Judge, for joining us tonight. How are you today?
Anthony, I was talking to you earlier, and you're just exactly the example of what we need for, we call them down ballot, but extremely important races around the states. And so congratulations to you. Proud to be with you. You deserve our support. Go get them.
Awesome. Well, that means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. We're working hard out here in Washington, and people are buying into the ideas that you've been talking about for years, and so many other great libertarians have as well. So I'm excited to share some ideas with you and have a conversation and see where it goes. But why don't you just real quickly just tell everybody, we've got a judge on the show here today. Tell everybody just a little bit about your background and let the folks tuning in know who you are.
Well, sure. And candidly, bluntly, because if you're in a campaign, you have to kind of speak about yourself. I believe that I have a better background, better record than anyone running for president of any party in this race. I was in the Peace Corps. I was in Costa Rica. Puedo hablar español como la gente también. I was in the Navy. I was awarded a combat action ribbon and then was a Navy JAG attorney for about 4 years. I was a federal prosecutor in Los Angeles and then private practice for a while, and then was a trial court judge in Orange County, California for about 25 years. During that time, and Anthony, you probably remember this, that I held a press conference. Judges do not do that. But back in 1992, I held a press conference saying our nation's drug policy has failed us, which it has, and that told anyone who would listen that we have to exchange that for anything, because anything would be better than what we were doing then and now. I actually, surprisingly enough, guaranteed anyone who would listen that by the year 2000, we will have in our country a materially different drug policy. And boy, was I wrong about that one, because it's still kind of lingering over, but we're making progress. And then, I was the 2012 candidate, thankfully, for vice president, as a Libertarian with Governor Gary Johnson. Very proud to do that. One of the most exhilarating and frustrating experiences of my life, because I then believed that we were the best candidates. We just didn't get the traction, weren't involved in the presidential debates. If you're not in the presidential debates, you're not considered to be viable. So we brought that lawsuit. We'll still have to face that again, and now in 2020, but we're working for you. We're going to literally change the culture of our country so that we make libertarianism accessible to everyone, just like Anthony is doing here. He's a common sense, down to earth, principled person who will do better for you. Libertarian Party, we libertarians are the only political party that does not want to benefit by being involved in government. Anthony doesn't. He wants it for the people. He wants to provide services and then back off. Or as we say, we're going to get government out of your bedroom, out of your wallet, out of your business, and out of your way. Meet Anthony Welty over here. That's exactly, I believe, what he wants. That's what Judge Jim Gray wants as well.
I love it. And getting this message out in front of people in forums like this is wonderful. This is an area that, we didn't have 20 years ago in the Libertarian parties. And had we, maybe we would have already reformed a little bit more of that drug war that you had been hoping to. So, you touched on something that's really important to me, and that's kind of getting involved in activism and so on. So I'm curious, because you were the first person, the first Libertarian, you and Gary Johnson, that I ever voted for. I voted for Obama in 2008. By 2010, I walked away before it was popular, before they had a hashtag. And by 2012, I got, I was glad to vote for Gary Johnson and yourself for the primary, or excuse me, sorry, I'm in primary mode because we just filed here in Washington. But
Anthony, if you had gotten another 34 million of your friends to have voted for us, we wouldn't be here today.
It's funny enough. I had some Facebook posts pop up a little while back. Back then, I was yelling at people for talking about politics on Facebook. I was like, "Leave this alone! I don't want to hear it." And now here I am doing it myself. So forgive me, people. I'm sorry for bombarding you with politics, but I truly believe that these are important conversations that we need to have to reform our country and to bring true prosperity to the lives of everybody in the United States and the whole world. Tell me a little bit what turned you from somebody that maybe believed in libertarianism to somebody that wanted to run for office. Like, what made you make that jump?
Actually, I've always kind of felt, Anthony, that my karma was to be in federal office, like it or not. In 1998, I took an unpaid leave of absence from the bench and ran as a Republican for U.S. Congress. I felt that as soon as a good candidate opens his doors, the world will flock to your doorstep. And boy, was that a mistake. It takes money. But then I became a libertarian, actually, with the passage of the so-called Patriot Act back in 2002. Direct frontal attack on our civil liberties. Could not be a part of any organization that would condone, much less assist that attack. And I literally remember the transition took 13 seconds. I remember I really am a libertarian. I thought I'll be a libertarian for life. It's just where I'm home. And I've always kind of been a libertarian, again, back in 1992 with my press conference. But then I ran for U.S. Senate against Barbara Boxer here in California as a libertarian. David Nolan was around, and he was very active in my campaign, kind of flattering and warming. And then when Gary Johnson asked me to run with him in 2012, I was again flattered. And it was, again, the most exhilarating thing as well as the most frustrating thing, like I said. But I believe in who we are, believe in what we would do. And Anthony, when I learned about you, I believe in you. I just want to help you in any way I can. These people of Washington would be smart, advantaged to elect you to your insurance commissioner. That's just, you're the right guy.
Well, we're going to make it happen in November, and getting libertarians elected around the country will help me get accomplished the things that I'm talking about. So, to the folks tuning in today, one of the reasons why I'm having libertarian candidates on for office is because we share the similar ideas. And so many of you have really grown to appreciate the things that I talk about and value them. But in office, there's not a lot of people that value these same things. So we need to get folks like Judge Jim Gray elected and others here in Washington, right? We've got 13 libertarians that have filed for office here in Washington this week. And doing that and getting those people into office will make my job easier to reform the things that we've been talking about for years now. And some of those things are federal issues. So Judge Jim Gray, running for the Libertarian nominee for POTUS, what do you tell the people what you think the federal government's role is in healthcare and health insurance?
Oh, that'll be a short answer. 0. Next question. Let me go back to something called, what is it, the Constitution? I think it's still alive. There's nothing in the Constitution that allows the federal government to be involved in anything connected to healthcare or education, by the way. There is such a thing as the 10th Amendment. It's still there last I looked. That, let's see, any power is not delegated by the Constitution to the federal government. It leaves to, what was it again? Oh, the states. And what was it again? The people. It's vastly ignored. But in a Gray Sharp administration, we will resurrect the 10th Amendment. It's just better for the more local decisions to be made by the people first, or if not, then the families, and just goes up the ladder. Yes, the federal government has a place in our world, without doubt. In fact, look at the Article 1, Section 8. I think we need a military. We need a judiciary. We need things like that. It says we need a post office, too. I don't think they anticipated FedEx or UPS. But that's something we can deal with.
Or underfunded pensions.
And that's right. The people involved in the government are really the privileged class in our world today. with their pensions and the rest. And okay, it's a little bit hypocritical because yes, I have a pension. I was a state judge for 25 years and I have a pension. Would I give it back? No, but we need to address these various issues. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. I was just flattered, exhilarated. Anthony, April 21, I became a granddaddy for the first time. And so April 26th was 5 days old. Little Hudson, I was holding him. And I looked down at this little miracle child, which he is. And then, candidly, I thought, okay, Hudson, you're $76,000 in debt. Pay up.
Day one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We have saddled my little grandson with a deficit, everybody in their country, a deficit of $76,000. Libertarians are the only people that represent my little grandson. We're only people that represent our children and our grandchildren. We should be proud. And as soon as people realize what libertarians stand for, they will flock to us because we have constituents all over that just do not know that we are there, that they do not know we're their constituents. The young people, the military and their families who we keep sending off into battle without a declaration of war. The elderly and the sick. You can get into this with regard to healthcare issues. Look, ask your voters this, Anthony, and I suggest it to you. If you want your healthcare to be run by the equivalent of the Department of Motor Vehicles, that's where we're going. Is that what you want? No. I'm older than you are. When I was raised in the 50s, middle 60s, it wasn't even a subject of conversation that we didn't have enough emergency rooms. It wasn't a conversation about healthcare being too expensive. It just wasn't. It was competitive and it worked. And doctors would volunteer to help people that couldn't afford it. It really worked well. Then we got the federal government more and more involved. It started with Medicare, and now look at us, with all of this bureaucracy and this stuff. No. If I were going to a medical doctor today, Doc, I've got a knee problem. The doctor says, oh, Jim, you want an MRI? What's going through my mind? Well, let's see. I've got Medicare. I've got Anthem Blue Cross insurance. It'll probably cost me $25 as a copay. Sure, why not? Might as well get the best, get the Cadillac. But if I'm paying my own money for it, what's my response going to be, Anthony? I don't know, Doc. What's it going to show me and how much it's going to cost?
Yeah.
You asked
and can we shop around?
Doctors don't even know how much it's going to cost. Guess what happens to costs? They go up. Surprise, surprise. Sure, competition will come back to healthcare, will reduce the cost and increase the quality. So I'd ask your voters, ask anybody listening, can you come up with any circumstance in which the government got involved in the free market when prices did not go up and quality and services went down? It happens every time. Get the government out of it and we'll reclaim that competition, reclaim the quality and the lower prices. Pretty straightforward.
And a lot of politicians that claim they want affordable health care, right, that do nothing to actually reduce the cost. It's what additional regulation, what additional law, what additional fee can we do? What additional money can we take from Paul to pay Peter? And cost only goes up. And it's been going up for decades after decades after decades.
Well, we can expand the discussion and see what's going on in this pandemic today. That, now the government is going to centrally plan our economy. Are you kidding me? I mean, they can't do it. It's arbitrary. Government has no business reopening our economy. They had no business in closing it in the first place. It's going to be a catastrophe. They have resulted in hundreds of thousands of businesses stopping, many of which will never recover. And what, tens of millions of jobs lost? It's a mockery. But as you know, Anthony, politicians respond politically. So mayors and governors all around the country, I'm going to do everything I can to keep you healthy. Okay, I'm going to do all of this. Now, you may lose your job, you may lose your businesses. I'm going to do everything I can to keep you healthy. So then if you remain healthy, I'm a hero. Look, I won, it worked. Or if you get sick, well, I did everything I could, so you can't blame me. In the meantime, of course, the whole economy, the businesses, the jobs, wasn't even a factor of the equation. Allow the individuals. I own a hardware store, for example. I own a small hardware store. Today, I've been closed down. I'm a non-essential business, okay? So people go to Home Depot, they go to box stores, and they're going to buy their fruits or vegetables or clothing, and they also buy my hardware. So you have helped my competitor and you've closed me down. What we do instead, across the board. You allow me as my hardware store to advertise. Hey, I put in a filtration system. Hey, I'm going to take everyone's temperature. By the way, there's a thermometer that isn't even intrusive. It doesn't even touch you. It'll take my temperature. If you got 100-degree temperature or more, we're not going to let you in the store. Employees, customers, no one. We're going to keep our spacing. We're going to only have 10 customers in the store at the same time. You make the decision. Yep. Now, it's much less dangerous for you to come to my hardware store than it goes to a big box store. You decide. So I can stay open. We struggle, but we work. And if I'm 80 years old and I have pneumonia, I'm not going. But if, Anthony, you're healthy, you make that decision. It's less dangerous for you to go to my hardware store under those circumstances than it is a box store. You allow the customers and the merchants to decide and negotiate. That's what works. And you're getting away from that arbitrariness of government, which is a disaster.
Yeah.
Other than that, I have no whatsoever.
Well, and government is really good at ignoring the unintended consequences. And that's something that I really harp on here. And I think it's what separates libertarians from everybody else, right? That, when a Democrat or Republican passes a law, they think, who's this going to help? Right. And I tend to look at things as like, man, who's this rule going to hurt? Right. Because we know downhill, there's always a pain point. There's somebody else that's losing with a rule or regulation, whether it's monetary or whether it's losing their property in some degree or their liberty in some degree, or, somebody is always losing. And in this case, it's business owners while big corporations are profiting, getting giant bailouts in the $2 trillion stimulus, and God forbid what comes down the hill next. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And, in the federal sense, regarding healthcare and insurance. So, you mentioned that, the federal government's authority should be zero. And I fully agree with that. Centralized or decentralized care is absolutely best, and decentralized all the way down to the doctor and the patient, ideally. So they can make the healthcare choices for themselves. But if you could pinpoint maybe one thing in the federal sense that you think has been maybe most harmful to the healthcare, which obviously increased cost of insurance, what would you pinpoint, and what would you do to fix it?
Well, we're so ingrained now that basically Medicare was the first entry by the federal government into the system. And just the more you enter into it, the more the administrators win. Again, if you make it so that the customer is not paying the costs go up and control goes down. Where before, you'd know that if I'm going to come to the doctor, you'd pretty much know when I was growing up, okay, I have a toothache, I have a whatever. You'd know what you're going to be paying when you went in. Today, cost is simply not a factor. And that's really caused by the whole system sponsored by the federal government. So this Medicare for all and the rest of that sort of stuff, as Pete J. O'Rourke said, and I subscribe to it, if you think healthcare is expensive now, wait till it's free. It's that whole deal where you don't have the customers paying for something, prices go up. And like I mentioned with my MRI, it's just the federal government has simply no business inserting itself into this situation. Just doesn't. It makes it a mess.
And one thing they've done from a health insurance standpoint, that constitutionally they actually maybe could interject and maybe even I think should at a certain point here is like things like buying insurance across state lines in the interstate commerce clause. The states are supposed to be doing business with one another, and it's been completely restricted. Do you have any thoughts on that as somebody that's more probably legal minded than myself?
In today's world, it's senseless not to be able for me in California to buy some health insurance from Washington or Idaho or Colorado. I mean, it's just nuts. You've got the vested interests in California that do not want the competition. I understand that. Why not? If you allow the government to shield you from competition, that probably benefits you in the short run. But we're not going to choose those winners and losers. Take it back to the Constitution. Again, remember that? The Constitution, the founders were really bright. They did not allow, for example, New Jersey to put up tariff barriers for trade with North Carolina. They did not allow any tariff barriers among the colonies, among the states. Hooray for that. Now, Anthony, it's probably easier for us in Lincoln, Nebraska to trade with China than it would have been back in the colonial time, North Carolina to trade with Maryland. We shouldn't have trade barriers there either. It works. Trade helps everybody, but you don't protect people, you allow them to compete. So we start doing what we're good at, and other people start doing what they're good at, and pretty soon things work. It's the same thing with regard to insurance. It's the same thing with regard to healthcare. We need to get that back. And by the way, and you know, I was in the Peace Corps. I care about people, and I do. And by the way, let me explain my philosophy. If I were bleeding on the street right here, you would have no legal obligation to help me whatsoever unless you cause my injuries. That would be different. But we will because we want to. We're compassionate people. So I would have a system, for example, with healthcare, based on a sliding scale, probably covered by the federal government, to provide vouchers to people. If you make no money on a sliding scale, you could use these vouchers to buy healthcare, health insurance on the private market. You could even use them to make your copays if you needed to. Because as a practical matter, and I believe this, if I'm going to stand up and say, I'm going to repeal Obamacare, which I would do, by the way, but immediately you're telling about 40% of the people, you don't care about me. Well, I do care about you. But I want to bring the private enterprise system back into healthcare. So with those vouchers, then you get the government out of it. You let people choose where to go, your healthcare, your way, and then you can use these vouchers. How many people are going to need the vouchers? I don't know. I'm not that smart. 15% maybe on a sliding scale. The rest of us will have healthcare totally up to us. We can buy our own insurance. We can get our own healthcare needs. If you even use medical savings accounts, if you don't spend that money this year, it will roll over till next year, eventually use it for your retirement. So you spend your money wisely. Jim, do you want the MRI? What's it going to show me? How much is it going to cost? You bring the competition back and good things happen.
You know, I've got some friends that work in like the direct primary care industry. Or even some pharmacists that don't take insurance. A guest I had on a couple of days ago, actually. And, you know, what's interesting is when people put their own money or into their health, their health gets better. The outcomes are better. And the treatments, when they're not so overburdened with, you know, filling out, medical claims and, you know, checking boxes for the government, the health outcomes get better, and people take a better interest in their well-being.
No, it's true. You again become a partner in your own health needs. Today, you know, it's some bureaucrat. In fact, I was proud on the bench. I had a medical malpractice suit that was brought against the insurance adjuster. It was a doctor that was for the insurance company who said, no, this patient shouldn't have such and such a procedure. And so they sued him for malpractice. And the defense was, well, I didn't have any privity with that patient. Yes, you did. You made that decision. You should be responsible for it. Responsibility matters. I need to say it again. Responsibility matters. You bring the individuals back as a partner with their own medical professionals, with their own medical needs. Good things start happening. I spend my own money. I'm a partner. I don't just trust some bureaucrat. I'm involved with it, and situation will work. Competition works. You know, take out your cell phone. You look at, you know, the government doesn't create that cell phone. Costs keep coming down. Quality keeps going up. The same thing again will happen once more with regard to our healthcare once we get the government out of it. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and when the government gets out of it, we can.
You, Anthony, it's on your shoulders. You have to carry this through now.
Well, we can definitely get some things done at the local level here if we can get the federal government out of the way. One of the things, though, that's unfortunate in Washington is, you could repeal Obamacare regulations at the federal government, and Washington's doubled down on them here. And, you know, something that I like to point out to people is that, again, one of the differences between libertarians, Democrats, and Republicans is libertarians aren't against any of those, the coverages that are mandated. If you want those coverages, we want you to have them. We just want you to allow your neighbor to have different coverages if your neighbor wants to have different coverages.
I know much better than you do about your health care, Anthony. Come on. I'm going to take care of you. Hogwash. You're right.
Now pull out your checkbook, Jim.
That's right.
But but it's so important, I think, to really clarify that point, because, you know, even with the Medicare for All debate, you know, that I don't think the debate has to be yay or nay. It has to be you do you and we do we, or, you know, we do us. Because if you want a, you know, a giant insurance program with 60 million people in it, there's nothing stopping you from creating that program. You
Sure.
could use the free market to do it. And you could have 60 million, you know, progressives that want, you know, a Medicare for All type system funded by, you know, let's say Bill Gates, right? He can afford it. You know, maybe maybe they could even get Jeff Bezos to donate $1 billion. They could have an all-encompassing Cadillac type, you know, one size fits all plan for 60 million people, so long as they don't force, you know, Susie Smith across the street that maybe doesn't want that. And that's what I think makes libertarians so different, is we want to allow both sets of principles to flourish, so that you're not, you know, infringing on anybody else's morality or, you know, emotional need or physical need or, you know, desire, because it's their life, not ours.
Well, let's take it back in history. That it goes back to the Nixon administration when he imposed wage and price controls for Republicans too, by the way. But prior to that, we didn't have healthcare involved with businesses or with government. But with wage and price controls, you're a really good employee. I want you to come to my company, but I cannot increase your salary because we have wage controls. So what am I going to do? I'm going to offer you benefits. So I will now offer your health care as a benefit, even though your wages remain there. So I'm going to offer you something because I want you to come to my company. So that's what got the foothold in here. Companies should not be involved in your health care. You shouldn't have, just because you work for General Motors doesn't mean that you really should have more bargaining position than somebody who works for mom and pop grocery. But that's where the government started getting involved. And it's now become, you know, the people that make money in the healthcare industry are the administrators. Are those people. Many of the better doctors, they don't want to play this game anymore. Mm-hmm. They don't want the insurance company dictating what they can and cannot do. So they're on concierge service now. So you pay them a certain amount of money every year. You know, it's just artificial, and it's caused by government. I care about you. I want you to be protected. I want you to be able to do your own health care because you're no better at it than I am. And that's the problem. But again, I don't want to repeal Obamacare without replacing it. I would use those vouchers, Milton Friedman all the way, and it just works. And that's the beauty of it. You get the government out of making the decisions, and you allow the individuals to use those. And if they're using vouchers, they use them on the private sector, the private medical sector, and it works. What today? Ask yourself this question. Today, there are 3 areas in which you, I, or anyone else can get good quality health care at reasonable competitive prices. What is it? Okay, LASIK eye surgery, cosmetic surgery, dental surgery, cosmetic surgery. Why? Because the government's not involved. Insurance companies are not involved. Come to Dr. Gray. I will give you, you know, payment plans. I'll give you the best cosmetic surgery. Competition is still there. Let's bring that back to everything else. It's not that hard.
And, you know, it even circles back to one of the root causes of the issue is, you know, the national debt and the fact that people are living so paycheck to paycheck nowadays. And even in car insurance, you know, I'm running for state insurance commissioner. I was, you know, I sold car insurance and home insurance and auto insurance. And I filed a lot of claims. And what I started realizing after a couple of years is people file claims because they, you know, for low amounts for a couple reasons. I think they've been desensitized and just, you know, slide the insurance card. But also because people are so, the government takes so much of our money in taxes, you know, 30, 40, 50%, in a lot of cases more if you look at hidden taxes, to where sometimes people don't have $3,000 put away for a broken arm. Right. And so insurance has been able to kind of co-opt that and then perpetuate it. And now it's a slide your insurance card for everything under the sun mentality.
Well, and two, because people that have, like, work for General Motors, whatever, they have bargaining position. So, you know, I have Anthem Blue Cross and I get pretty good deals on that because I have bargaining position. But it should be the same price for everybody. If an ambulance picks you up and takes you to a hospital, if you have insurance, you'll pay them $200. If you don't have insurance, you'll pay them $800. It's the same ride. And of course, they know that a lot of people won't have money to pay the $800. So the ones that do, you know, get cheated. It's just artificial. I don't like artificial. You get the government involved in any of these things, and it becomes artificial. It becomes arbitrary. Get the government out, and then the free market will work on these things. Prices, incentives, the marketing, the pricing system. Those are the things that work.
And the products that people want, because right now nobody's happy with insurance. Like people know, if they get in a car accident, they can file a claim. It's, things are usually going to go okay, and they're glad they have their car insurance, but they buy it out of a necessity, and they hope they never need it. Versus you go buy a new TV, a new flat screen, a new car, a new cell phone, new suit, whatever the case is. You're excited about those things. Nobody's excited about insurance. But I think there's a lot of things we could do, even at the state level to open up the market so that insurance companies start competing over people's product need and desire. And when you do that and you put the customer first, all of a sudden there's more interest. People are like, oh man, you hear about this great new insurance product that came out? It's awesome. It saves me a ton of money. It covers exactly what I need. Right. And everybody goes home happy. But we don't have that right now. So, I want to do things like bring a la carte insurance into the state of Washington where, if there's an insurance company that wants to offer, XYZ coverages, they can offer it and you can pick and choose because, an example I use is a buffet line, right? If Judge Jim Gray wants bacon and sausage for breakfast, he can have bacon and sausage. If he just wants oats or buckwheat, he can have oats or buckwheat. And right now we can't do that with insurance, health insurance. I mean, you can do it with your car insurance. You can decide, do you want full coverage? Do you want liability? Do you want high deductibles or low deductibles? Do you want towing? Do you want glass coverage? But for health insurance, no, everybody gets the same thing.
Let me turn the tables on you, Anthony. You are running for insurance commissioner in the great state of Washington. If you are insurance commissioner, when you are insurance commissioner, what's going to happen? What's your approach going to be? Because you're up against some obstacles. But in the first 60 days, what changes are we going to see from the office of the insurance commissioner?
Well, the first thing they're going to see is somebody that's actually in the legislature lobbying for each individual person, because right now the state insurance commissioner is hidden in the shadows. Nobody knows who he is. He isn't out there representing the people. He's in a consumer protection agency, but nobody feels protected for insurance. So I want to actually go out and give a voice to the people in the legislature, be accessible so that people actually feel like they have representation, because we are in a representative government. And, right now that's a lot of what just people are looking for is they want somebody that they can trust, somebody that listens and doesn't spew mainstream media party rhetoric. And what I believe that I can do is actually bring that back to the people, and that, power to the people sense that we are our own government. We self-governance is key. And then, even admitting that it will be an uphill battle with a legislature that doesn't necessarily think the way I do. What I've come to realize, as I'm sure you have, Judge, that politicians really want one thing. They want to get reelected. And if my ideas get elected in November, they're going to start listening to my ideas because they are going to know that my ideas are popular. So if we get somebody elected on these ideals, we can start putting pressures on the legislature to actually change things, because ultimately they just want to stay in power.
So what are the changes then that you're going to trumpet with regard to your ideas, the libertarian ideas, individualism, getting the government out of it more, all that sort of stuff? What are you going to do?
Well, the most important thing is to stop taking from the people. Politicians get paid too much. We talked a little bit about that at the beginning of this, pension, things of that nature. The state insurance commissioner recently got 2 raises in back-to-back years. He went from $120,000 to like $127,000 to now to $137,000. I vowed, and this hasn't actually been public before, so maybe here's my public announcement, seeing as it's filing week.
I hear it.
My wife knows, and some of my internal campaign knows, but I'm going to donate 50% of my salary back to Washington state-based charities. I made $60,000 in Washington in the private sector, median wage here, nothing to write home about, right? I'm not buying a mansion. I don't want to go into politics and profit. We talked about that at the beginning of this call. So I'm going to lead by example and say that no, politicians don't deserve this king salary that they get. They don't deserve these pensions. They don't deserve the better health care than what the general public gets. So I'm going to carry the torch there and really lead from the front when no other politicians are willing to take the cut. I'm going to take the cut and challenge them to do the same thing.
Good. That's called leadership. Yeah. I really feel that the public sector is the privileged area in today's world in so many ways. We were actually, my wife and I were in Tahiti taking a tour around the island, and we had a tour guide, and we came upon an enclave on a cliff overlooking the ocean, really quite ritzy. And he said, "Oh, well, this is one of the special places. That's where the government workers live." And I thought, logical extreme. Now, they were French and stuff, but the logical extreme. But that's where we're going. And no, we're servants. We're servants of the people. And so you're leading that charge. But yeah, the more go ahead.
I think there's so much policy that we could always talk about, and something that really resonated with me when I started thinking about running for office, and I realized how divisive things are right now. You know, how you can't have a conversation on Facebook or Twitter without somebody throwing an insult. And what I really started thinking about is like the heart behind politics, because I don't have any the heart behind
the heart.
Yep.
Behind politics?
And there's not, I don't believe, in a lot of ways, or I believe it maybe becomes co-opted once you get in there, because people fall victim to the two-party control and, you know, have to do what their political party says. And if anybody knows libertarians, we never listen to each other. So, you know, my party will never control me. But the idea that instead of arguing just on the policy, we need to be attacking the root, and the root is the very system itself, that the two-party system, that the power and control that the lobbyists and the politicians have. And I truly believe that that's a nonpartisan issue. I think it's an area where general public tends to agree that, you know, Congress gets paid too much, that these guys have too much pension and healthcare, and but nobody in office, or nobody that ever runs for office ever talks about cutting that stuff. You know, we see change.org petitions go around. We know the general public likes these things. But then you get AOC in Congress who, you know, says $179,000 isn't enough to live on. So I want to get to the basics. As much as I love talking about healthcare reform, I truly think we need to take it even farther, and we need to look at the politicians specifically and how they're profiting from this, and that the lack of service, the lack of servitude, or not servitude, that's not the right word. The volunteering heart, like I'm volunteering for this position, right? I want to help, you know, versus other people. I feel like they're running for office because they want to be elected, because they want to be a politician. And like, I see this as much more of a, you know, serving, you know, food to the homeless, right? This is just another way to serve the state, right? Or your military service. You know, I didn't serve in the military. You know, it wasn't something I was interested in, but this is a way I can serve and I can help people.
You want to know something discouraging? You want to get depressed?
Do we have to?
Your choice. Google the words "the plum book," like the fruit, the plum book.
Okay.
And it's a federal publication. It is a list, 212 pages, by the way, single spaced, of all of the various positions that the president appoints, half of whom are confirmed by the Senate. They're just pages and pages of all of these positions. And each one pays somewhere between like $168,000 and $198,000 a year. It's just unbelievable. You wonder why government is so expensive. Pare them back. What I would do as president right away is have an audit of all of the agencies of the federal government, showing what they've accomplished in the last, say, 5 years, what they've spent, what their goals were, what they accomplished. Now, what are your goals for the next 5 years? What do you wish to prove? What is the budget? And then we can all look together, put it on C-SPAN, and you can say, well, wait a minute, we don't need that. That's duplicated with such and such. Cut that back. Oh, that was fine in the New Deal, but that was the 1930s. We don't need that anymore. Pare that back completely and start auditing all of these groups. Pretty soon we'll figure out, hey, we don't need these agencies. You know, you go to the Department of Education, you know, the Health and Human Services, all that sort of stuff. No, this is local stuff. So we shine a light on it, and pretty soon people think, oh yeah, that's right, that's libertarian. No, we don't want that. So you show people by example. That's what you can do. You know, again, one of the crusades you can take up is, why have not allow insurance companies to be interstate? You can shine a light on that. You'll be in be interviewed by the New York Times once you become an insurance commissioner, and you can shine a light on that sort of thing. Hey, we'll have competition. We don't need just insurance companies in the state of Washington, maybe Oregon, maybe Nebraska. I mean, you can just do that by example. And that's what Gray Sharp 2020 is going to be doing. We're going to be leading by inspiring instead of scaring people. We're not going to say we're going to abolish this and abolish that. We'll just shine a light on it and show you why it should be cut back or abolished, or interstate commerce.
Yep.
I mean, you're going to be in a position to be able to educate and show people. And then we're going to want more libertarians. Yeah, I want somebody in the Department of Transportation too, that sort of thing. You're the boots on the ground. Bless you. Thanks for what you're doing.
And for the, the Washingtonians turning in, imagine Washington being the first state that allows that, and how much business it'll create for the state, what the economy will take, and how much lower your prices will be if you're allowed to both buy insurance from other areas and they're allowed to sell it to you here, because the state government says, okay, cool, you can do that, no worries, as long as you don't hurt anybody, you're cool, right? And we could do that with public pressure, demanding that our legislatures give us our freedom back, and helping push my ideas into office in November. Well, go ahead, just real quick here, if you could. I wanted to touch on just one or two last things, and we'll let you go. I know you're a busy man. You mentioned at the very beginning the Presidential Debates Commission. I kind of want to close with this because this is one that's personal for me. One of the first things that turned me away from the two-party systems was when I realized that there was such thing as a commission for presidential debates. I've talked about it a little bit in my campaign. You're running for president. Tell the people what it is, why you don't like it, and how you would, as the nominee for Libertarian Party, fight against it.
Well, in 2012, as you know, Anthony, I was the vice presidential nominee along with Governor Gary Johnson, and we were excluded from the debates. So we started looking into this. We brought a lawsuit. We found out that the so-called Commission on Presidential Debates, there are 10 commissioners, 5 of them high-ranking Republicans, the other 5 high-ranking Democrats. And we got into their papers, and the papers said, oh, we're not nonpartisan, we're bipartisan. The purpose of the Presidential Debates Commission is to allow the Republicans and Democrats to get their word out to the voters. That's it. And before that, it was the League of Women Voters that controlled them, and their criterion was any party that's on enough ballots in enough states, technically to win the presidency, should have their voice heard. It's not easy to get on the ballot in Washington. And if you get on enough ballots in enough states, technically to win the presidency, you're a main player. Your voice should be heard. So that was their criterion. But when the Republicans and Democrats started coming into this, they started edging the League of Women Voters out. They wanted to use their name for justification, and the League of Women Voters left the commission with the public statement, we're not going to be a part of the hoodwinking of America. And I love that quote ever since. It's accurate. It's from the League of Women Voters. Yeah. So we're going to bring an action again. We failed legally, the court, in my opinion, we had a good solid case, but they ignored our precedent and just ignored it. But there are sponsors. I'm sorry to tell you this, Anthony, but elections are money, and there are sponsors for the debates. I'm not sure who they're going to be. I know Southwest Airlines may be, and various other corporations. We're going to call them out, saying, look, open this up for any political party that's on enough ballots in that states. We even carried the torch for the Green Party. We don't agree with them politically on almost anything, but they were on the ballots in 40 states. We were on 48 states. Yep. Sure, bring in their competition as well. But we're going to make this public through these corporations and hold them up, because if they start saying, no, we want others in these debates, then it will happen. So that's going to be our approach this time. It's simply, I don't use this word very often, but it's un-American. And by the way, let me tell you, while you were just mentioning your last comments about allowing, imagine the government, any government, allowing you to buy insurance here but not there. It's none of their business. Yeah. Come on, get out of that. Allow indeed, allow the people to decide. People, the consumer should decide where that money is going to be spent. Competition, interstate, what's going to happen? Mr. Welty, prices will come down, service will go up.
We as free humans, not even as Americans, just as free humans, we have a right from our Creator to labor how we want, to use our fruits of our labor how we want, and to do what our life what we want, and we need to get back to respecting our differences from one another, and truly allowing people to coexist without that government force over the top and those regulations, because it is force and it's coercive. And when you're using that against your neighbor, we're never going to have a truly peaceful and prosperous society to the degree that we could have otherwise. So I appreciate you carrying the torch for all these years, Judge.
Well, you're making me feel old now, but thank you, Anthony. And thanks for what you're doing. I support you. I endorse you, what you're doing. And I don't do that lightly. Go get them. And to the degree I can help whatsoever, just please let me know, because
Awesome.
you're the where really the sausage is made, so to speak.
Well, nobody likes to see that process, and we're going to try to make politics a little cleaner here. None of these BS games these other two parties play. I've had enough, and I know you have. So thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. Be Free TV. Make sure to share this later on. Watch it, the whole thing, if you didn't catch it. In the meantime, if you want to volunteer for either Judge Jim Gray's campaign or my own, be sure to check us out on online. My website is anthonywelty.com. The judge's site is graysharp2020.com. We are accepting donations. We have signs, t-shirts, swags, whole 9 yards at anthonywelty.com. So go get yourself a beer koozie or something and help propel this campaign forward. So I wish you all a good night. God bless, and be free.
Good night.